AITA for rejecting the ex who left me because I married her worst enemy? I grew up in a small town near Denver in a middle-class family where my parents worked hard to give me a normal childhood. My dad was a mechanical engineer at a factory, and my mom taught third grade at the local elementary school. I have an older sister, married with 2 kids, who now lives in Chicago. We are not very close, but we get along well at family gatherings. In high school, I was an average student. I played football, even though I was not a starter. My grades were okay, but not enough for a scholarship. I had a small group of close friends. Most drifted apart over time. I was not really a ladies' man. My first serious relationship happened in my junior year and lasted about 8 months until she left me for a guy who, among other things, already had his own car. I went to Colorado State University to study computer science, and that is where I started to find my voice. I made good friends and discovered I was pretty good at programming. Even though I still did not shine in romance, I had a few relationships that lasted a few months. I graduated with a respectable grade point average and landed my first job at a small tech company in Denver. I was not the kind of guy who caught women's attention. Average height, a little overweight. I started to notice my hairline receding at 25. Even though I stayed in shape, I was not particularly attractive, just a normal guy who likes watching sports, playing video games, and hanging out with his friends. I drive a 2017 Subaru that I am still paying off, and I have an uncontrollable addiction to spicy food and those videos of people cleaning dirty driveways with a pressure washer. Exciting stuff, I assure you. By 27, I was settled into adult life, had my own apartment, a modest studio near work, slowly climbing the ladder at a cybersecurity company, and with my student loans paid off. The dating world was unpredictable. Lots of first dates from apps that led nowhere. And then I met Haley. It was at a tech conference in Las Vegas. My company had sent me there to man our booth. Something about as exciting as watching paint dry. And there I saw her. A 25-year-old woman, long blonde hair, green eyes, and a smile that made you forget what you were saying. She wore pencil skirts and blouses that combined professionalism with a touch of elegance. The kind of person who in college would not have even looked at me twice. But somehow, during the quiet moments of the conference, we ended up talking. She laughed at my lame jokes and seemed genuinely interested in my work in cybersecurity for healthcare providers. At the cocktail party on the second night, the conversation went on for hours. She gave me her number, and I spent the rest of the conference floating on a cloud. My friends warned me there had to be a catch. My best friend Tyler even commented, "Dude, she is a 10 and you are a 6 on your best day. What is her angle?" But I was too captivated by her green eyes to see the red flags. The thing with Haley was that she knew exactly how attractive she was and used it to her advantage in many situations. At restaurants, a simple smile got us the best tables. On planes, flight attendants upgraded her for free. Even police officers let her off with just a warning. I felt lucky to be with her, like I had won the lottery. What I did not realize was how much she needed that attention. If we were in a place where she was not the center of it, her mood would plummet. She would get sulky. She would say her head hurt or complain about the restaurant, the movie, or anything else. Plus, she was always on her phone, at dinner, in bed, even when we went out with friends. I assumed it was normal for someone in marketing, always busy building her personal brand. Later, I found out she managed multiple social media accounts with different personas. Fitness-focused, lifestyle, and other carefully curated versions of herself. The first red flag I should have noticed was how she treated service staff, sweet and polite, until something was not perfect. Then, she would turn into someone with an inflated sense of entitlement. I remember one time a waitress spilled water on our table, not even on her, and Haley demanded to speak to the manager, leaving the poor girl nervous while I sat there uncomfortable, not knowing what to do. But our connection felt incredibly strong, and when she was in a good mood, she made me feel like the most important man in the world. Today, I recognize it was classic manipulation, but at the time, I was hooked. After 6 months of a long-distance relationship, me in Denver, her in Phoenix, with frequent visits from me and a few from her, things seemed to be working out. Then Haley's company opened an office in Denver and offered her a transfer. She called me all excited, and I was thrilled. Within 2 months, she moved to Denver and into my apartment. Living together brought unexpected adjustments. My old bachelor pad was transformed. Suddenly, there were decorative pillows, framed motivational quotes, and plants everywhere. My gaming room became her personal social media studio, but I was happy to have her there, regardless of the changes. On our first anniversary together, I started noticing more red flags. She would get irrationally jealous if I mentioned a female coworker or showed up unannounced at my office at lunchtime. Later, I realized it was her way of keeping tabs on me. She even checked my phone while I was sleeping. When I confronted her, she said she was just adjusting my alarm. We had been together for 2 years when I proposed to her after a year of dating. I did it at an expensive restaurant that cost me a month's salary, even though she hinted she had hoped for something more spectacular. Apparently, she wanted our proposal video to go viral. Still, she accepted. I bought the ring she had been tagging on social media for months, a 2.5-carat stone that forced me to take out a huge loan. Then came the wedding planning, and I handed her my credit card without hesitation. $30,000 for the venue, several $1,000s for the dress, $10,000 for food and drinks. Even though I was going into debt, I thought it was worth it. This was my forever life, or so I thought. Haley wanted a spring wedding at a vineyard near Boulder with 200 guests, half of whom I barely knew, and every detail designed for social media. My parents worried about the expenses and quietly suggested scaling back, but Haley became inconsolable for 2 days, accusing them of not accepting her into the family. I felt weak and backed her up, which caused a rift with my parents that took years to heal. 8 months of intense planning went by, and we were just a week away from the big day. Everything was paid for, with non-refundable deposits everywhere. My college friends were already on their way for the bachelor party, and Haley's bridesmaids had just tried on their dresses for the final time. We had finalized the tasting at the vineyard and confirmed the menu. I was stressed about the finances, but excited for the wedding. I thought the planning stress would soon disappear and married life would begin. I noticed Haley seemed distracted, which I attributed to the final wedding details. She was spending more and more time with her planning team, which included my friend Dylan, who had moved to Denver a year earlier and had grown strangely close to Haley. He was helping with the reception playlist, which in hindsight should have been another red flag. Since when did Dylan care about wedding playlists? 1 week before the big day, I had just finished a call with a client when I checked my phone and saw a text from Haley. I cannot go through with the wedding. I met someone else. I am so sorry. I hope one day you will understand that this is for the best. Just like that, 2 years together, $50,000 invested in the wedding, and she ended it all with a text message that probably took her 10 seconds to write. I called her immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, sent texts, even called her mom. Nothing. Devastated, I drove to her apartment. I was so distraught that in my state of confusion, I ran a red light and nearly caused an accident. When I got there, she was gone. Half of her clothes were missing. Her makeup was no longer on the vanity, as if she had evaporated from my life. I sat on the bed we had picked out together at the furniture store, the same bed we had assembled between arguments, and just stared at the wall for hours. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing. The caterer confirming final numbers. My cousin asking what time to pick up the tux. My mom wanting to know if I had decided on the centerpieces yet. I could not answer. Words had abandoned me. Finally, I called Tyler, my best friend since college. He arrived shortly after and found me sitting on the bed staring at my phone. "What is going on, man? You look like somebody died," he said. I handed him the phone with the message open. He read it, and his expression went from confusion to shock, then anger. She ended things via text. That was when I broke down. Not movie crying, but gut-wrenching sobs in front of my best friend who sat next to me with his hand on my shoulder, letting me vent. Between tears, I asked, "What do I do now?" "The wedding is next Saturday. Everyone is coming. We already paid for everything," Tyler replied. "First, we call everyone and say it is canceled." The next 24 hours were a blur of calls. Tyler handled notifying the vendors while I had the thankless task of explaining to my family that the wedding was not happening. My mom cried inconsolably. My dad remained in a tense silence. My sister offered to come stay with me despite her 2 young kids. The hardest calls were to my friends who were already en route to Denver. My college roommate Corey was on a layover in Chicago when I called him. "Seriously, she just left?" he said in disbelief. My cousin Logan, who had already landed, rented a car and drove straight to the apartment, luggage and all. That night, 4 of my closest friends stayed with me. Everyone was in shock, furious on my behalf, and baffled about where Haley was or who this someone else was. 2 days later, I found out who that someone else was. Dylan, a college friend, my former roommate for 2 years, the first person I had confided my proposal plans to, the guy I had even asked to be one of my groomsmen. Tyler confirmed it. He saw them together at the airport, sharing an emotional embrace at the international departures gate with luggage in hand. He sent me a picture almost as if he wanted me to know he was leaving for Bali, the honeymoon destination we had dreamed of together. To top it all off, I checked our joint account, the one we had been saving in for the honeymoon. The money was gone. She had withdrawn it 3 days before sending that text. At that moment, everything made sense. All those wedding planning meetings Dylan attended, the times Haley went out with her friends and came home late, the sudden password change on her phone, the way she got defensive if I asked how her day went. It was all happening right under my nose for months. I looked through our photo albums and social media, and the clues were everywhere. Dylan appearing in the background of certain photos, tagging him in comments with inside jokes I did not understand. Checking into places we usually frequented. I realized my trust had been broken, and I had been too naive to see it. That night, I felt overwhelmed and began packing away the things Haley had left behind. I deleted all our photos from my phone. I blocked her on all social media. I even changed the streaming password. A petty act that gave me a fleeting sense of control. Then came more calls. Notifying the 200 guests that the wedding was canceled, hearing the pity in their voices, and explaining over and over that I was just as surprised as they were. Even Haley's parents contacted me, confused because she had told them I was the one who canceled the wedding and that I had been unfaithful. Her dad even raised his voice on the phone until I forwarded him the text message and the picture Tyler had sent me. Then he got quiet, apologized, and hung up. I never heard from him again. The vendors were not understanding. The venue kept the $3,000 non-refundable deposit. The caterer refunded a measly 10%. The florist gave back nothing. The photographer at least refunded half. My credit cards were maxed out for a wedding that would never happen. The next day, I received an email from Haley with no hint of an apology, just a request to send her some sentimental items she had left at her parents' house, as if this were just a simple disagreement. I did not reply. A few days later, Dylan sent me a message. I know you are hurting, but when you calm down, I hope you understand that you cannot choose who you fall in love with. That sentence was the straw that broke the camel's back. I threw my phone on the floor so hard it shattered. The next 6 months were the darkest of my life. I lost 30 pounds because I could not eat, sleep, or focus at work. My performance dropped so much that my boss put me on an improvement plan, a polite way of saying get it together or leave. I could not sleep in the bed we had shared. So, I ended up on the couch. I could not break the lease, so I was stuck in an apartment full of memories. Meanwhile, Haley and Dylan were posting their adventures all over the world, Bali, Thailand, Australia. Funded with the money we had saved together. My friends did their best to help me. Tyler and Logan practically moved in with me the first month, making sure I ate, showered, and got out of the apartment. My sister stayed for a week, her kids filling the place with noise and life. But when everyone went back to their lives, I was left alone with my thoughts, which were getting darker and darker. I replayed every moment of our relationship looking for the signs I had ignored, wondering what was real and what was not, and if she had ever truly loved me. The worst part was not losing Haley, it was losing my trust in people. I started seeing several therapists who told me, it is not about you, it is about her. But when someone throws you away like that, it is impossible not to take it personally. I kept going to work, even though it was like being on autopilot. Finally, my boss called me into his office and said, Brandon, everyone knows what happened. Take some time to recover. So, I took 3 weeks off and went to my parents' house, taking refuge in my old childhood bedroom. My mom cooked my favorite meals and my dad, without asking questions, involved me in his projects, fixing the deck, painting the garage. The physical labor kept my hands busy and my mind off the pain. When I returned to Denver, I decided it was time to take my life back. I bought a new phone with a new number. I created new social media accounts. I changed the locks on the apartment and got rid of everything that reminded me of Haley. I even painted the walls and rearranged the furniture. 7 months after the Haley situation, I was finally in a better place. My new job was challenging but rewarding. I had made friends at the office, and on a whim, I signed up for rock climbing. Something I had always wanted to try but that Haley had no interest in. I started eating better, going to the gym regularly, and finally sleeping through the night. It was at the climbing gym that I met Brooke. She was 30 years old. She was a physical therapist, divorced, and had no kids. She was not the conventional beauty that Haley represented. She had curly, rebellious hair, avoided makeup, and dressed for comfort, not fashion. But her deep brown eyes seemed to see beneath the surface, and her laugh had the power to brighten anyone's day. Our first conversation happened when she pointed out that my climbing technique was a recipe for injury. Not exactly a compliment, but she was right. As she corrected my posture, that chat turned into a coffee, which led to dinner the following week. Always with caution, on our third date, I told her about Haley, expecting her to run for the hills. To my surprise, Brooke shared her own divorce story. Her ex-husband was a high-functioning person who had hidden his problems until after the wedding. She had been divorced for 2 years. "We all have scars, Brandon," she said. "The question is whether we let them define us." We took things incredibly slowly. No rushing into anything physical on the first date. No introducing each other to friends until 3 months in. With Brooke, there was calm, no drama, no games, no checking the phone every 5 minutes. She was present, genuine, had her own apartment, her own friends, and her own life. She did not try to merge our identities into an indistinct blob like Haley did. She did not post about us on social media because she did not need external validation for what we had. What she demanded was honesty, respect, and communication. I remember the first time we argued over something trivial. I do not even remember what it was about anymore. I braced myself for the silent treatment or the manipulative tactics I was used to with Haley. But Brooke simply said, "I do not agree, and here is why." And we talked about it like adults. It took me months to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. To stop thinking she would suddenly reveal a hidden agenda, because with Haley, there was always an angle. After a year, I felt secure enough to suggest we live together. We found a small house to rent. It was not fancy, but it had a yard for Brooke's dog, and it was close to our jobs. Moving in together was the exact opposite of the experience with Haley. No power struggles over decor, no endless selfies documenting every corner, no arguments about what was most important. 6 months later, I knew she was the one. Not in a desperate or clingy way like with Haley, but with the quiet certainty of having found my home. I proposed to her at the top of a mountain after a grueling hike that nearly killed me because I was so out of shape. No fancy restaurant, no audience, just us and the view. She said yes, and it did not even bother me that her fingers were so swollen from climbing that she could not try on the ring. A simple band that she loved, without the flash of a status symbol. We got married at the courthouse 6 months later with only our families and closest friends. Haley was a distant memory. Instead of an expensive dress, a $30,000 venue, and a lavish reception, we used the honeymoon money for a down payment on a small house. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again, like the Haley chapter was finally closed. Or so I thought. Until 3 years after my marriage to Brooke, the past came knocking at my door. One Saturday morning, I was mowing the lawn when a white Range Rover pulled up in front of the house. At first, I thought it was someone who was lost, because our garden had grown so thick it looked like a maze. Then she stepped out. Haley. Unmistakably Haley. Looking like everything she wore was designer, with perfectly styled hair and a casual look that clearly cost a fortune. But there was a hardness in her eyes that I had never seen before. "Brandon," she said, as if we had seen each other yesterday. "You look fit." I turned off the mower and asked, "Well, what are you doing here?" She flashed that smile that used to make my heart race, but now just tied my stomach in knots. "I have been thinking a lot about you, about us. I made a huge mistake," she said, and she even laughed, as if we had never stopped being us all these years, as if she had not left me for my friend, ended the wedding over a text, and was now hoping to pick up right where we left off. She stepped closer, and I could smell that perfume that was her signature scent. "I know you are angry, and you have every right to be, but what we had was real. Do not tell me you do not still think about me," she insisted. "I am married," I said firmly. Her eyes darted toward the house for a fraction of a second. Her face showed pain before returning to the mask, So many people knew. Just at that moment, Brooke opened the front door holding a cup of coffee. She was wearing an old college t-shirt of mine and shorts, her hair pulled up messily. Haley looked her up and down with a look of contempt on her lips. "Hi, I am Haley. Brandon and I were engaged," she said, as if Brooke were just a parenthesis in her story. That implication made my blood boil. Brooke walked calmly toward me, put an arm around my waist, and said in a steady voice, "I know exactly who you are. Why are you at our house?" Haley ignored her presence and focused solely on me. "Can we talk in private for a moment?" I did not let her finish. "Say it right here in front of my wife." She let out a laugh of disbelief. "Come on, Brandon. Living in a small suburban house with her is not you. Look, when you used to say I was the only one, we had plans, a life. You ruined those plans," I reminded her. Her expression completely changed. Her mask crumbled. "Seriously, you chose her? Really? Her over me? Look at her, Brandon. Then look at me. Do you really know what you want?" At that moment, Brooke took a step forward. "Oh, he made his decision 2 years ago. The moment you showed your true character. Get off our property before I call the police." Haley reacted as if she had been slapped. She tried to appeal to our shared past, to what we had. "You know how good we were together, Brandon. Tell her. Tell her how good it was." I simply shook my head. "It is over, Haley. Do not come back." As we turned to go inside, she raised her voice. "This is not over, Brandon. You are going to realize what a huge mistake you are making. She will never make you as happy as I could." We shut the door, but a feeling of unease washed over me for the rest of the day. Haley had never been good at taking no for an answer, and when she got something in her head, she did not let go easily. My instinct was right. Over the next 2 weeks, she launched an all-out effort to get me back. First came the texts, dozens of them from different numbers to bypass my blocks, then the emails. Somehow, she got Brooke's work number and bombarded her with calls at the clinic. The messages varied from pleading to manipulative to threatening in tone to delusional. I saved them all but did not reply. Brooke and I agreed that responding would only make things worse. And then it escalated. She showed up at my office reception, making a scene that forced security to intervene. She got my parents' address and sent them a rambling letter, begging them to make me see the light. My mom, worried, called to ask what was going on. I explained that Haley was struggling and asked her to ignore anything she sent. Haley even created a fake social media account to follow our friends and spy on our lives. She left comments on old photos of me, insinuating we were still in touch and working things out. I had to personally warn them not to interact with her. The last straw was when she confronted Brooke in a supermarket parking lot. She followed her to her car and had a disturbing exchange about our relationship, claiming I would always feel more for her and that Brooke was just a temporary obstacle. My wife came home shaken. She did not believe a word of it, but Haley's behavior was so upsetting that she was genuinely scared. She would not let me close the car door, Brandon. She kept saying I was just in the way. That was the limit for me. I decided it was time to stop her. I did some digging and found out that Haley's life had completely fallen apart. Dylan, the guy she had left me for a week before the wedding, had ended things with her for someone younger. They had blown their savings on bad investments. She had lost her marketing job during mass layoffs and had not found steady work since. At 31, she was living back with her parents, in debt, and desperate to find someone to fix her life. A mutual acquaintance told me, "She has been talking about you for months, Brandon. She says you are the one that got away and that leaving was the biggest mistake of her life. I am telling you seriously, she is not in a good place." I realized I had become her new lifeline. In her mind, all she had to do was get rid of Brooke to slot herself back into my life. So, I came up with a plan. I got a burner phone and texted her, pretending I still had feelings for her, that maybe she was right about my marriage, that I needed to see her. I suggested meeting at a coffee shop. She took the bait immediately, replying with eager messages and emojis as if she had won the lottery. Brooke was worried. "Are you sure? She seems unstable. That is why we are meeting in a public place," I explained. "And I am going to record everything. This has to end. Asking nicely is not working." I went to the coffee shop and, sure enough, Haley was already there, wearing an outfit that screamed premature victory. The look on her face said she thought she had won. I sat across from her and let her talk. She launched into a speech about how she always knew we were meant to be, how leaving me was her biggest regret, and how we should start over. Then, I pulled out my phone and hit record. Let us be clear, Haley. You left me a week before our wedding-to-be with my friend Dylan. You took $15,000 from our account. You told people I had been unfaithful. Now that Dylan ended things, you are broke and you want to come back. Am I wrong? Her expression shifted from confusion to anger in a second. That is not fair. I just made a mistake. A mistake like the persistent, unwanted contact with my wife at work, showing up at my parents' house, creating fake accounts to spy on us, using different phones to bypass my blocks, following Brooke in a parking lot, and upsetting her. I did not threaten her, she yelled, raising her voice and looking around nervously. I just told her how I felt about us. There is no us. I am married and I am happy. If you ever contact me, my wife, or anyone in our families again, I will take this recording and all the evidence I have to the police and file for a restraining order. She glared at me. You would not do that. I leaned forward and said softly, try me. I have already spoken to a lawyer. I have proof of harassment and intimidation. They will force you to stay at a safe distance. If you violate that order, there will be serious legal consequences. Your choice. Something inside her seemed to break. Do not do this to me, Brandon, she said, her voice shaking. I have nothing. Dylan took everything. I live with my parents. I do not have a job. I need you. You should have thought about that before breaking our relationship, I replied, noticing real fear in her eyes for the first time. Then, I delivered the final blow. Actually, I have something for you. I pulled an envelope out of my pocket and handed it to her. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a donation receipt and a business card. What is this? She asked. It is a donation I made in your name to a women's shelter that helps people escape toxic relationships for the exact amount you took from our account. $15,000. Her jaw dropped. She could not speak. And that card is for a therapist who specializes in these kinds of patterns. I paid for your first 5 sessions. That was not entirely true. I had just grabbed the card at a mental health event at work. But the look on her face was worth the little white lie. That is money I considered lost a long time ago. So I do not need it. But you need help. Real help, not another relationship to lean on. Go to therapy, fix your life, and stay out of mine. I stood up and left her sitting there, staring at the receipt and the card. As I walked away, she cried out, Brandon, please, I am sorry, I will do anything. I did not even turn around. I walked out of the coffee shop and headed to my car, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from relief. I had finally said everything I wanted to say for years, and I felt like I had taken my power back. As soon as I started the car, I called Brooke. It is done. I do not think she will bother us again. When I got home, she was waiting for me on the porch and hugged me without saying a word. We stood there for a long time in silence, sharing a moment of absolute peace. That night, Haley sent one last message. I regret everything I did. You will not hear from me again. And surprisingly, she kept her word. The next day, she deleted her social media. A mutual friend informed me she had moved to Phoenix to live with her sister. Apparently, she had some kind of breakdown after our meeting and finally decided to seek professional help. The lawyer I consulted had the paperwork ready for the restraining order, but I never had to file it. Haley disappeared from our lives, hopefully forever. Update. Brooke and I are expecting our first child in a few months. It is a girl. Life is quiet and good. Sometimes I think about what my life would have been like if I had married Haley. Constantly stressed, doubting her words, buried under debt for her extravagant spending. Instead, I am with someone who loves me for who I am, respects me, and faces problems with me as a team instead of manipulating me. I still have occasional nightmares where I am back in that apartment staring at the text message that changed everything. But then I wake up with Brooke by my side and feel a profound sense of relief. As for the $15,000, yes, I made an equivalent donation to a women's shelter. They sent me a thank you letter explaining how they used the funds to help people rebuild their lives. It was the best way to close that chapter and turn something painful into something positive. Comment. This story stayed with me long after I finished reading it. I hope it gave you some space to reflect on your own experiences too. One of the biggest lessons for me is how essential self-respect really is. Setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary to protect your peace. True healing begins the moment you decide to stop accepting what hurts you. I believe we all deserve relationships that bring calm instead of constant chaos. Taking responsibility for your own happiness changes everything in the best way. Be gentle with yourself while you're healing. You are doing better than you think. Choosing peace and genuine connection is always worth the courage it takes. I hope this encourages you to keep choosing yourself and the life you truly deserve. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.